Hello, people of YouTube. So this is our first state that we're going to be covering on one of the few states that I want to move to, and going in alphabetical order, we are going to be talking about Alaska. And we'll be talking about the reasons why I want to move to Alaska, and then we'll be going into the reasons why I don't want to move to Alaska or my concerns. And I'm going to be doing this with every video. So why do I want to move to Alaska? Well, politically speaking, it's a red state. I feel like the less people there are in an area, the more conservative a society tends to be. In Alaska, much like even Wyoming, even Oklahoma, compared to other states, doesn't have that many people, which makes it a red state. And with being a red state comes usually lower taxes. The state has no land tax if you're a veteran with a disability over, I believe it was 50%. So there's that kind of pro. There's no state tax, and depending on where you're at, there might not even be sales tax. I know Homer has, I believe, the highest sales tax in all of Alaska at 7%, but if I remember correctly, Anchorage has 0%. So as far as your taxes go, there are very little to none. You're still going to have to pay federal tax. So as far as taxes go, I feel like that is an absolute win. That is just great. I will say, going ahead of myself, one of the concerns that I have is if the state isn't making money off of taxes, how are they making their money? And I know I've researched that, they make money off of oil and natural gas. I remember if there was natural gas. I'm sure their fishing industry, they make money off their fishing industry. But a part of my ignorance is, okay, great, they have a bunch of oil and a big fishing industry, but how do they make money off of that? With how vast, they're the biggest state in the United States, and with all the infrastructure, especially looking at roads, and even just the whole first responder aspect of things. I don't know, it just kind of makes me curious how the state actually makes money and how it goes back into society. Especially if the taxes are going to be that low, which is great, but it also does seem too good to be true. What's another thing? So I've never been to Alaska. As of the time of recording, I have never been to Alaska. However, as of about 2 weeks ago, I bought plane tickets to go to Anchorage, and I will be in Anchorage in about a month and a half, and I'll be there for about a week. Now, one of the pros is I'm going to Alaska, and I get to witness the state firsthand for the first time in my life. However, I have been told that if you're going to go somewhere, especially to live, you should go there during the summertime to see what it's like during the summer months, when it's most hot and the days are the longest, and you should go there during the winter time when the days are most cold and the days are shorter. And that goes for every state. For Colorado, I only came during the winter time, and when I came during the winter time, it was very beautiful. But I know Colorado is not that extreme compared to Alaska. But when I look at the pictures of Alaska, and I'm basing a lot of what I know and see off of the internet, Google Maps, Street View. When I drop myself into a random place in Alaska, more specifically like the Kenai Peninsula, Palmer-Wasilla, Anchorage area, I cannot help but feel that I am just in a smaller, more isolated Washington state. The ocean's right there, the forests are right there, the mountains are right there, and it just looks and feels like Washington. Again, from the internet's perspective, I'm going there in about a month. We'll see how it actually feels when I get there. And I will tell the audience what I've told some of my friends in the past is, in a perfect world, and I'll also include this in my Washington video, and yes, Washington is one of the states that I want to move to, but I tell my friends that in a perfect world, I'd be a firefighter in Port Angeles. I'd have a nice home, maybe some land, and just something about Port Angeles with, I've grown up in Washington. Seattle's maybe a 2-3 hour drive away. Families nearby, the ocean's right there, the mountains right there. Hurricane Ridge is one of my favorite places to go in all of Washington. Port Angeles isn't as populated as like Seattle is, but it's not as isolated as like Altus, Oklahoma is. That's what I want. I don't mind being a part of a small town that isn't too small, but I don't want to live in a major city. Even Colorado Springs is a little bit too big for me. Maybe some land. I know the pros and cons of having land and living in a neighborhood. I can tell the audience that, and I hope there are people from Washington that can relate, but there is something about doing like a 4th of July barbecue on the Washington Peninsula on a nice, warm, sunny day that I just absolutely love. You got the smell of the forest, the smell of the ocean combined, the smell of barbecue, your little cousins are running around in the yard, just playing tag or playing football. And the unfortunate thing is Washington is very expensive, and I feel like a lot of the people are toxic. And it's put me in a position to where, what is the next closest thing to live in Washington, I guess. Washington is my home state, and I feel like in my heart will forever be my home state. And I have this idea or this thought of, if you return back to where you're born, but under the circumstances, politics, society, and again, I'll talk about more of this in my Washington video, I just can't. So I'm at the point now where it's like, hey, if you could live anywhere, where would it be? But if you could live anywhere that resembles Washington, where would it be? The internet says Oregon. I don't want to live in Oregon. That is not one of the videos on here. So, again, with all the street views that I do with Alaska to me just seems like a more northern, isolated, red, low tax Washington state. And a lot of that just sounds like a win-win, too good to be true, and maybe it is. But just as I mentioned in previous videos, I just want to get away from people. I've had, and this was in my trust issue video. Just I have a lot of problems with people, especially this past 2 years here in Colorado specifically. And I just want to go somewhere a little bit more isolated. The politics seem to align. The taxes are very low. It looks like a more northern Washington. So with that all being said, that's why it looks very desirable. Here's my concerns, though. Believe it or not, one of my concerns is not the lack of light during the wintertime. I already have a friend living up there right now. I'm planning on seeing them. And they mentioned, oh yeah, the sun rises during the winter solstice in Anchorage. The sun rises at around, I believe it was like 8:30 to 9, and then sets around like 3:30 to 4. And if someone's from Alaska, if you can give like a more accurate time, I'd appreciate it. And it varies on the internet, unfortunately, so yay. But when this individual told me the time, I was like, that is very similar to what the Washington winter solstice is like. The sun rises at 8, sets at like 3:30 to 4. It sounded very similar. I think between Seattle and Anchorage you might lose an hour, but the fact that the sun still comes up, even during the winter solstice, is for a decent amount of time is actually fine in my book. If you're in Fairbanks, it's like a lot less. I think it's like 3 to 1 hour, something like that. And then Burrow, Alaska changed their name recently. I don't know what it is, what it's called, or how to pronounce it. But I'm gonna call it Burrow, Alaska. I don't even think they get any sunlight during this winter solstice. But the daylight doesn't bother me. I know that I've been told Anchorage or Alaska in general gets a lot of rain. That's no different than what Washington is. My concern is not even really the cold. I just realized I'm wearing this. It's not even the cold. And I say that because I would, and unfortunately I've narrowed it down, Alaska's a big state. You know, I can say I want to live in Alaska. I could be talking about northern Alaska by the Brook Mountains, the Aleutian Islands, the capital, and all those archipelago islands by Canada. I could be talking about somewhere in the middle of Alaska, Fairbanks, maybe some kind of like settlement or homestead. I am talking about, I've narrowed it down to as far north as Palmer, Wasilla, to as far south as Homer. So essentially the Kenai area, Anchorage area, is what I narrowed it down to. I'm not too concerned about the cold. And I say that because Colorado, I live in Colorado, as the audience might know. I live in Colorado. I would say about maybe 3-4 times a year it gets into the negatives. And the coldest I've been is -14, twice. I'm sure there are people in Alaska that are laughing, haha, you know, I've been at -20, 30, 40, 50 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't think the peninsula or Anchorage gets that cold because we have a saying in Washington that sometimes the ocean regulates the temperatures. It doesn't prevent Washington from getting too hot, but it doesn't prevent Washington from getting too cold either. And I'd like to think that the same concept works in Alaska. And the same person that I'm going to see up in Alaska, oh yeah, gosh, I've never seen it go below -20 in Anchorage. Okay, no big deal. My concern is the snow. I'm already anticipating, if I do end up in Alaska, getting a new truck, getting snow tires, something that really handles the snow. But with snow comes driving hazards, lots of slush, you got massive snow banks. Even today, as I'm talking, we're having a winter storm in Colorado right now, and there's just a bunch of snow out on the ground. I actually drove one of my friends to work this morning, and a 2-lane road suddenly turned into a 1-lane road because snow was accumulating on the sides of the road, and it has a potential for car accidents. So, but that's, and for those of you who say, like, well, if you don't like the snow, don't move to Alaska. Well, a lot of the places that I have on the list are going to get a lot of snow. The reality is, unless I'm moving to Florida, I don't even think Florida is a option on here. I mean, hell, even Colorado is getting a bunch of snow right now, and I'm not even close to Alaska. And honestly, it's just a minor concern. I'm sure there are ways that the people of Alaska have found a way to get around all that kind of stuff. Another concern is apparently there is a big homeless and drug problem up in Alaska. The story that I've heard is there are a lot of Native American tribes up there, and if a Native American commits a crime, they are ousted from the tribe, and that in turn makes them homeless. They get their hands on drugs, and apparently, from what I'm told, is Anchorage has a real big homeless problem. Then again, what area doesn't have a homeless problem right now? If I had to look at the Kenai Peninsula, I can't really pronounce the town, Soldotna. I was told, has the highest crime in all of Alaska. However, when asking my friend about it, they said, well, yes, there's high crime on the technicality that people fight over, I guess, land or fishing rights. But that kind of makes me wonder, well, what kind of crimes are being committed? I guess sexual assault is a 3 out of 5, which, to my understanding, if people live somewhere isolated, sexual assaults tend to rise because people have nothing better to do, or maybe, as far as a guy's perspective goes, they are very limited on women and desire that, physical touch, physical attraction, something along those lines. At least that's an old proverb that I'm going off of in regards to why sexual assault was so high in Altus, Oklahoma. But I do fear, at least as far as what I've experienced in Washington and Colorado, I do fear homeless people on the technicality of just having to deal with more break-ins. I just don't want to do that. All that kind of stuff. So that's a concern. It's the crime, but a lot of these places that I'm going to be mentioning, crime is always going to be a problem. The housing market seems to be a lot more lower and accessible in Alaska. However, I don't think I'll be moving to Alaska or any other state for at least another 2 to 3 years. The whole point of me coming to Colorado was to save money and get back up on my feet and set myself up for the next state. So as much as the housing there is a lot cheaper compared to Colorado, at least for Colorado Springs area, who knows what it will be like in 3 years, at least. Moving to Alaska, I feel like I would get away from all of the drama from the lower 48. I cannot help but feel that with all this political toxicity, it is all in the lower 48 and Hawaii. But that is me, I think, being a little bit arrogant or ignorant or not being kind of real with myself because, well, I know there's like an LGBT community. I know there's like a leftist community up in Alaska. Surprisingly, there's a lot more leftists in Alaska than I thought, despite it being a decently blue state, a decently red state. But I also can't help but feel that it wouldn't take much to turn it purple. I guess overall being isolated would at least help water that drama down. Though, to be fair, I get a lot of this drama online, but I also do get it a little bit in person. I feel like living somewhere isolated like Alaska would, there's no reason to make a fuss about politics up here because, everyone is here to work, maybe enjoy the wilderness. There's not that many people. I feel like the more people there are, the more, political things get on the technicality of, what's something that can affect all the people, whereas in Alaska, it's everyone's either in, Juneau, Anchorage, or Fairbanks, and outside of that, it's just small towns that really don't care. I mean, we're already tax-free on state and some sales tax. So I would like to get away from that drama. But I also don't know what the people are like up there, what the culture's like, but that's again why I'm going up there. I know I kind of spitball a little bit between desires and concerns, but I feel like I've made my point as far as what my concerns are and what my desires are. I think in conclusion, my desires would be it's a red state with low sales tax, if any, no state tax, less people. It's more isolated. As far as jobs go, there is one fire job up there that actually looks desirable, and I'll keep that area anonymous. Other than that, I also mentioned that I have a desire to be a pilot, and There's a lot of flying jobs up there, so I feel like that's kind of a win-win. And then, of course, my concerns are I don't know the people. I don't entirely know what the culture is, what the politics are, or how big the politics are up there. If I really can get away from it all, what the crime is like, how bad the homeless situation is, I don't know. All I can say is I'm going to be up there in a month and a half, and the rest is up for the audience to give their feedback on to me via these videos. So this concludes my Alaska video.